So this is a time of revelation and a time of choice. The revelation of the grievous harm we have inflicted on the life of the planet, and the choice we can make to transform our relationship with it from one of dominance and control to one of caring, service, and love. All our relationships need healing, but above all, our relationships with nature and the earth, because that is the primary one that has been out of balance for millennia and is in desperate need of healing. Collectively, we are going through a profound alchemical process of transformation as we live through this pandemic. Millions of people have died, 4 million in India alone. Millions of children have lost one or both parents. Men and women everywhere are mourning the loss of parents, partners, and colleagues, cut off from them with no chance to say goodbye. This is an unprecedented trauma involving the whole of humanity. On top of this, confronted by the devastating fires and floods of intensifying global warming, we feel intense anxiety and grief and anger as we wonder whether we are approaching the end of our time on this planet. These events constitute a spiritual emergency, shaking us to our core. But the very peril we are in may be our salvation if we can grasp the unrecognized message of what is happening, that this is a rite of passage we are going through, an experience powerful enough to stop us in our tracks and help us to understand what has to change. This is surely the message of the pandemic and of climate change, where the recent IPCC report is, according to the UN chief, a red alert. The science of alchemy, however, says that in all chaos there is cosmos, in all disorder a secret order. I think there's a problem, Rick, because it's not moving.
I'll put mine up, Anne. I'll just follow you, okay?
Okay. There's nothing I can do to make it move.
Okay, I'll be right with you. I got to stop your screen share.
Okay. Shall I start again then?
Hold on. Yeah, 1 second. Let me get it up and I'll be...
Okay, now I just need to go to, what do I do next? Oh, there we are. Okay, that's fine.
Where would you like to be, Anne? I think it was very clear at the beginning.
I'd just like to go to the next slide now. Should I be asking you each time, or shall I try and see if it works myself?
No, you're off right now. Just say next slide, or, you know.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay. Above the central door of the western facade of Chartres, we see the figure of Christ contained within the mandala or Vesica Piscis. As a cosmic being, he incarnated on this planet to offer humanity a path to healing through reconnection with the divine ground, but also a path to the unrecognized divinity within each one of us, the fully awakened and enlightened man and woman we have the power to become, recovering our true identity as cosmic and galactic beings, incarnated on this planet for an evolutionary purpose. He did not ask for belief, but for the transformation of our understanding of life and our own nature. Next slide, please. These images of two of the greatest teachers of humanity represent the awakened state of cosmic consciousness that is a potential within all of us. This marvelous Buddhist sculpture carries forward the ancient Vedic and Upanishadic tradition of raising the immense creative power of instinct from a state of unconsciousness to a state of fully awakened consciousness, symbolized by the 7 protective hoods of the cobra goddess, who represents the wisdom of the earth, spread out behind the Buddha's head. The teaching of Christ aimed to show the shamanic path to awakening that he himself embodied, as he is shown here, arising out of the tomb, with the sleeping soldiers at his feet, unaware of what is happening above their heads. Now, there are 5 different cosmologies or concepts of spirit. First of all, spirit is present in every aspect of the phenomenal world, which is found in the Vedic culture of India, the Upanishads, and the lunar cultures of the Great Mother, including China. In these cultures, there was no duality. Everything was one. Secondly, there was spirit which emanates from a divine father and mother, and is both transcendent and immanent, which is the teaching of Kabbalah. Again, no duality. Thirdly, spirit is wholly transcendent and male, which is the patriarchal monotheistic image of God, which split nature from spirit and led to a dualistic cosmology. Fourthly, spirit does not exist, which is the modern secular belief of scientific materialism, or physicalism as it's called. And fifthly, which is coming into being now, spirit is present in every atom of matter. All is the divine life. All is connected. The emerging revelation through quantum physics that everything in the entire cosmos is connected is the avenue through which this is coming. Again, there is no duality. Once, millennia ago, spirit was not outside us. We were within spirit. Spirit was the air we breathed, present within every aspect of the life around us. It is this utterly different shamanic experience of life that we have lost, yet it still lives deep within our soul memory. Alchemy, descending from what was taught in certain temples in Egypt and known as the Hermetic science, kept this ancient cosmology alive for us for over 4,000 years, and we are recovering it now. This is one of the great revelations of our time. Spirit, so long projected onto a transcendent creator, remote from our world, is the quintessential consciousness which is awaiting discovery, both in nature and in our nature. Although the gradient, I'm just going to say this before I start with the slide, although the gradient for the transformation of consciousness in humanity is so slow and arduous, we are all participating in a stupendous cosmic great work. This is something the alchemists understood and was the foundation of all their work. So whereas Christianity taught that the Redeemer is outside us and that our ultimate redemption as Christians has been assured by Christ's sacrificial death, alchemy taught that the alchemist can become the redeemer or rescuer of the lost aspect of spirit that was hidden within himself and nature, working with spirit to accomplish this awakening within him. This gives great significance to the individual, since the divine drama of redemption is consummated in and through us. It is an awesome and heroic task. Each one of us carries the mystery of the incarnation of spirit in this dimension. Alchemy is a sacred rite of unification, an opus divinum. Next, please. Long ago, in the 3rd century of the Christian era, there was an Egyptian alchemist called Zosimus of Panopolis, who wrote these words: "Hidden within man, there exists a heavenly and divine light, which cannot be placed in man from without, but must emerge from within." Alchemy is a sacred rite of unification, as I said, an opus divinum, because its aim is to reveal our innate divinity, our divine creativity that is part of the creativity of the cosmos, something that was known millennia ago in the temples of Egypt. This invisible yet immanent Holy Spirit is the flow of life in our veins, the flux and flow of our thoughts, the power of our instincts, the miracle of our physical organism, and the creative genius of our imagination. Think what it would mean for the transformation of all our relationships if the fact of our innate divinity were known and accepted by all people on the planet, regardless of race, religion, caste, class, or gender. You're going a bit too quick for me, Rick, because I say some things more that are in the picture, so to speak. So we're at the right place now, but each one of us carries within his or her being the royal value, the potential of fully awakened consciousness, symbolized by the mysterious stone or gold of the alchemists. Alchemy is a process of revelation, illumination, and transfiguration. The chrysalis can become a butterfly. Next, please. Now, the alchemist said there are two categories in this art, namely seeing with the eye and understanding with the heart. And this is the hidden stone, which is fitly called a gift of God. And this divine stone is the heart and tincture of gold, which the philosophers seek. Alchemy is the Hermetic science of transmuting the base metal of the pre-conscious soul into the gold of the awakened soul that is consciously united with the divine ground. The great work of alchemy tells us that we have our source in the starry ground of the cosmos, that we are literally star life in every cell of our being. The whole of cosmic and planetary evolution is an alchemical process, a continuous process of creation and transformation, of dissolution and regeneration, which is what we're going through now. The great work of alchemy refines the base metal of our understanding so that we, evolved from the fiery substance of the stars, can know ourselves as spirit. It heals the deep wound in the human soul that has come into being because of a sense of alienation, fear, loneliness, and separation from the divine. It tells us who we are and why we are here. The experience of reconnection with the light and love of the divine ground is the gold that is not the common gold. Next, please. The cosmos calls to us to be aware that we participate in its life, that everything is sacred and connected, one life, one source, one spirit. The cosmos has a soul, and we can learn how to communicate with that soul. We can learn how to heal with its power of healing. There has always been a chain of teachers known as the Golden Chain or Catena Aurea, who have transmitted their knowledge and insight from generation to generation over thousands of years. Two great streams of alchemical knowledge, one flowing from Egypt and the other from Persia, Syria, and Islamic Spain, came together in Europe in the late Middle Ages and the Renaissance. There were some 4,000 alchemists working in Europe between 1200 and 1650, and they created thousands of alchemical texts and images, some of which were called, as in the Sufi tradition, rosaria or rose gardens. In the Christian West alone, these texts ran to between 20 and 30,000 titles. Imagine that. Many of them are now safely housed in the Embassy of the Free Mind in Amsterdam, which is a miracle in itself. Alchemy and Kabbalah kept alive the shamanic idea that spirit is present in nature. Many Kabbalists were alchemists and vice versa. And this image is a Kabbalistic one where two men are sharing a vision of the higher worlds. In the 17th century, this great science of alchemy could have become the foundation of Western science. However, tragically for all of us and for planetary life, science took a different path of the conquest and control of nature, rather than relationship and understanding with her. And we are now enthralled to the limiting beliefs of scientific materialism. Next, please. Alchemy flows beneath the surface of Western civilization like a river of gold, preserving its images for us so that we might one day understand our presence on the planet better than we do. Here is an image of the alchemist following in the footsteps of nature, holding in his hand a lantern, which signifies the light of insight, and special glasses so he could see in the dark. The great work of alchemy is about healing the deep wound in the human soul, inflicted by the dualism of the patriarchal religions that split nature from spirit, and led ultimately to the desacralization of the created world. It is about recovering the lost lunar shamanic sense of participatory awareness, the lost sense of kinship with all creation. It is about recovering what Einstein called a sacred gift, the poetic vision, the imaginative sensibility that once connected us to nature and the cosmos. At the same time, it is about growing into our unique individuality, differentiating ourselves from the deficient values that presently control the political and religious life of humanity and the media, and living from a totally different perspective on life in the world, but not identified with the values of the world. This is a very important distinction. Next slide, please, Rick. Alchemy through a rainbow bridge between spirit and matter, or spirit and nature, holding the relationship between the above and the below, between the unmanifest and the manifest. So the alchemist said, "Whoever shall make the hidden manifest knoweth the whole work. Whoever shall make the hidden manifest knoweth the whole work." Much of what they discovered is coming into consciousness now at this time of humanity's awakening. The pandemic is one factor in this immense transformation, the other being climate change. Both are forcing governments and people to come together to prevent catastrophe. Next, please. Alchemy is not merely an art or science to teach metallic transmutation, so much as a true and solid science that teaches how to know the center of all things, which in the divine language is called the spirit of life. Alchemy is the Western tradition of inner psychic transformation. It is a feminine mystery, a mystery of the soul. The symbols yield their secret to those who contemplate them. The process of transformation is unique for each one of us, yet intrinsically the same for all. Next one, please. So the great work of alchemy is about the relationship between man and the cosmos. It's about restoring the relationship between man and the cosmos. It's about the creation of an immortal body of light, the integration of body, soul, and spirit, and the conscious reunion with the unus mundus, or the divine ground. This means we die a conscious death without fear of extinction. The alchemist knew there is no death for the soul. Please listen to that message. There is no death for the soul. Next, please. An alchemist called Ruland the lexicographer said, "Imagination is the star in man, the celestial and super celestial body, something that we can learn how to connect with." The great alchemist physician Paracelsus called it imaginatio vera, the true imagination. For the alchemist, the imagination is a subtle body, dimension, or field that we tune into when we connect with the deepest level, as we are doing now with this healing process. Think of the builders of Chartres and what the masters of the compasses tuned into, from what level of reality they drew their inspiration. Jung called the voice of this dimension, which is beyond our time and space, the spirit of the depths. The spirit of the depths is calling out to each one of us to heal our personal relationships, to cease our territorial rivalry, and to threaten the annihilation of millions with our demonic weapons. Even the UFOs, now acknowledged to be visiting our planet, are urging us to get rid of our weapons and our fossil fuels, and to heal the wounds we have inflicted on the body of the earth. Next, please. In many texts, alchemy gives us the image of a king who has to die in order that his son may rule in his stead. We can identify the old king with the deficient political and social values and belief systems that currently rule the world, that have ruled it for millennia. In relation to the individual, the old king personifies a consciousness that knows nothing of its deeper ground and is controlled by the power drive of the collective shadow. We can also identify the old king with an outworn image of spirit that needs to be relinquished in order for a new image to emerge from the depths of the soul. Next, please. There is a beautiful text that accompanies this image from a marvelous 16th century manuscript called Splendor Solis, the splendor of the sun, in the British Museum, which says, "The king's son lies in the depths of the sea as though dead. But he lives." I always cry with this. "And he calls from the deep, 'Whosoever will free me from the waters and lead me to dry land, him will I prosper with everlasting riches." Can't help crying. So here the spirit is calling out for help. And the king's son in the text and in this picture personifies the different consciousness and values generated by a deeper communion with spirit. 2,000 years ago, Jesus was the young king who brought potential renewal to his culture and the possibility of a radical transformation of human values and relationships, reflected in the sublime words of the Sermon on the Mount. 500 years before him, the Buddha did the same for his culture in India, offering the path to enlightenment to all, regardless of their caste or gender, although he did have a little difficulty with women. Next, please. Alchemy sets its supreme quest in the context of a marriage between the solar and lunar aspects of the soul, a union between our head and our heart, between our rational consciousness focused through thinking and another kind of consciousness focused through the heart, through intuition, feeling, and the creative imagination. This marriage also reunites the invisible dimension of the subtle world with the visible material world of our experience, so they are no longer seen as separate, but united in a sacred marriage. What this marriage amounts to is a profound healing of our long neglected heart, as well as the body, a healing of all our relationships with each other, whether personal, national, or racial, as these are placed in the context of what is of supreme value and importance, namely the transformation of consciousness. So now I come to the lesser work in the next slide. It's about the creation of the white stone or rose. It's lovely that the rose is entering into this wonderful science of alchemy. The stages of the lesser work are governed by fire and water, the transformative fire and the cleansing, clarifying waters of the soul. Next, please. Now, the first stage of the lesser work is separating the soul from the body, and it's called the Nigredo or separatio. It's the phase of death and dissolution, and it's accompanied by recurring depression, a blackness blacker than black, the alchemist said. The encounter with the dragon and the shadow or the power principle which has the world in its grip. So this is a tremendous work by the individual facing his or her own shadow and dissolving it through understanding and love, because it needs love. And the symbol of this phase is the raven. The alchemist saw the Nigredo or separatio as the state of blind suffering or ignorance before the dawning of awareness. They also called this state the unio naturalis, meaning the state we live in from day to day, responding to events as they happen, where we believe we have control of our lives, but are the victim of events or personal traumas and the complexes, beliefs, and survival instincts which control us. In this state, the creative spirit in us is not free, but is a prisoner of all of these, and also of what we call our rational mind, which has no awareness whatsoever of a deeper level of consciousness. To awaken from this state may involve intense anxiety, depression, and suffering, and is often triggered by a loss of some kind, the loss of a partner or a child or something precious. The nigredo is the phase of the ego's dying and death as it gives up its illusion of freedom, supremacy, certainty, power, and control, and becomes aware of the deeper dimension of the soul. This may come as a great shock to it. It is a descent into the darkness of the underworld, which is very frightening. It also involves the encounter with the dragon, or the power drive of the instincts, that requires the withdrawal of negative projections onto others, the kind of cruel projections and attacks on others that flood social media today and reveal the unconscious state of the collective psyche. This is an enormous challenge to the mass mind of today, with its total focus on what Jung called the spirit of the times, reflected in the superficial values and concerns which hypnotize millions of people, and also in those millions who are destroyed by the absence of meaning in modern culture. So separatio involves conflict, suffering, bewilderment, and surrender. The original sense of the oneness of our being is split into two. Yet paradoxically, this work of differentiation is the first stage of healing the soul by reuniting the conscious solar aspect of the psyche with the repudiated or ignored lunar aspect, reuniting the conscious mind with the heart and the lunar soul. Next, please. So the fire of transformation burns and transforms the dross in our nature until the state of unconscious fusion with our instincts is transmuted into a higher, more conscious relationship with them. The strange male-female form shown here is called the rebus, an intermediate state before the formation of the hermaphrodite. It is an image of what the alchemists call the first conjunctio, when the previous unconscious state is differentiated into two separate yet conjoined units. Here the rebus is undergoing the burning away of the dross that has covered the gold of the spirit. It is whitened in the fire, turned to ashes. Fire in this phase is the main agent of transformation, and it may be the fire of grief or deep depression. Collectively, humanity in the last century and this one has been through a terrible calcinatio. We have witnessed the images of incineration in the gas ovens of Auschwitz, the obliteration of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, death by napalm, depleted uranium, and white phosphorus bombs, the ruthless bombing and destruction of ancient, marvelous cities, the horrific collapse of Twin Towers. Oh, blast my tears. The catastrophic wars in the Middle East. Millions of helpless civilians have perished in these events or wander the earth as refugees seeking shelter. Only Gorecki's Third Symphony does justice to the suffering endured by them. Next, please. Oh, I'm missing one. There should be one called Mortificatio. Rick, that's the one, thank you. No new life can arise without the death of the old. Here we have an image of the shamanic descent into the grave or the underworld of the soul and the emergence of the transformed initiate. We see the sowing of seeds that will be transformed into the green shoots of regeneration. This image goes back to Egypt and the annual return of the dismembered god Osiris in the wheat that grew from the black mud deposited on the banks of the Nile. I can't go into all the details here, but the general thing is that man is emerging after his descent into the underworld. Next, please. Here is an image of a man holding a sword and a golden severed head, standing in front of a dismembered body. This image also takes us back to the lunar myths of death and regeneration, and to the mysteries of Egypt and the dismemberment and regeneration of Osiris. So we can know that after the experience of dying or dismemberment, there will be regeneration. And as you go through these, look at the wonderful borders around the edge, because they are part of the alchemical teaching, really, the reconnection with nature. Dismemberment is about letting go of old beliefs, dissolving old angers, hatreds, resentments, and guilt in which the spirit has become imprisoned, entangled, or buried. It's about undoing the structures we find ourselves in, the adaptation to the false beliefs and values of our culture. Psychic growth is a very painful process for the ego or conscious mind, and this image of dismemberment reflects it. But here again, you see the beautiful border around the edge, which symbolizes bringing oneself into relationship with nature and the flowering of nature within us. The melancholia and suffering of the alchemists are also the anguish of spirit itself, undergoing the travail and pain of dismemberment and transformation. The spirit suffers with us in the agonizing experiences of our own lives because we are part of spirit. Both are participating in a cosmic passion play. Next, please. The second stage is called the Albedo or Solutio, and it's the encounter with the feminine soul. This divine water, they said, makes the dead living and the living dead. It lightens the darkness and darkens the light. This is the stage of awakening, the opening of the heart, the copious shedding of tears, and the dawning of illumination, insight, and wisdom, which I think is what we're going through now. And the symbols of this stage are, first of all, the feminine principle, but the queen, the moon, moonlight, the white stone or rose, and the lily, the dove, and the swan. At this moment, I have dozens of marvelous lilies opening in my garden, like a great poem, a rejoicing of the opening, really. So the albedo is the phase of baptism or immersion in the watery feminine womb of the soul. It is a process of washing, cleansing, purifying, clarifying, or seeing more clearly. The light of insight and wisdom begins to dawn, as well as a new humility and a disengagement from achieving goals. The alchemists compared this stage to the gradual whitening of the sky after the darkness of the night, and also to the moon or moonlight. It's about the awakening of the feminine lunar principle, symbolized by moonlight, the awakening of the heart, the dawning of compassion for oneself and for the interminable suffering of life on this planet, not only people, but animals and the dwindling biosphere. It is about dissolving rigid, fixed beliefs, such as the belief that our lives are without purpose or meaning, that consciousness originates in the physical brain, or that there is only material reality. It is about melting the snow and ice of frozen feelings and shedding tears of sorrow and regret. At the same time, the creativity of spirit begins to be released like a fountain from the depths of the soul and seeks expression in some form. In this phase comes this discovery of unknown gifts as energy that was held in old traumas and negative patterns is released. There may be powerful, transformative, or awakening dreams like the one I had of a cosmic woman some 20 years ago or 40 years ago. It is about integrating the shadow, both the unknown creative aspects and also the destructive aspects that are the result of deep wounds to the heart, inflicted by parents or siblings or teachers or partners, or simply by the bitter struggle to survive in an uncomprehending world. Next, please. Here, the alchemist sits in a tub while an assistant uses the bellows to increase the fire and the heat. The dove of the feminine Holy Spirit rests on his head in blessing. Water washes, cleanses, renews, and fire burns, purifies, and transmutes. By these processes, the primal matter of our psychic life is refined and cleansed, rendered more subtle and translucent to the ground of spirit. By these methods, the quintessential gold of the spirit emerges from beneath the rust or verdigris that has accrued to it over the millennia of human evolution. The passionate intensity of devotion to the work is the fire that transforms, the fire that is spirit itself. The work may be any work that serves nature and humanity and that involves love and devotion. Next, please. In another image from this exquisite book, Splendor Solis, a dark man carrying in his limbs the three colors of the alchemical process, black, white, and red, emerges from the black mud of the Nigredo. He is greeted by an angelic woman whose white wings are covered with peacock eyes and whose robe is covered with flowers. She wears a crown and a six-pointed star rests on her head. She is divine wisdom, or Sophia, also known as the Sapientia Dei, the Holy Spirit, the feminine being whom the alchemists took as their guide. She holds the red robe which symbolizes the Rubedo, or final stage of alchemy, and a new, regenerated and integrated consciousness. Her yellow sleeve hints at the gold of the final stage. And all around this painting are the flowers and animals that are part of the divine unity of life. Notice the red rose in the top left-hand corner. This is an image that also goes back to the Egyptian mysteries of Osiris. The feminine image of Sophia as divine wisdom and the Holy Spirit is the presiding image of alchemy. Her origin may be in the great goddesses of the Lunar era, or the goddess Asherah of the first temple in Jerusalem, who was worshipped as divine wisdom and the Holy Spirit, or the wisdom texts of the Bible, where wisdom speaks as the Holy Spirit and offers the bread of understanding and the water of wisdom to man. The feminine archetype at its highest level has always been associated with nature and with soul, not soul in a personal sense, but soul as the great cosmic sea of being. The alchemists kept alive this ancient concept of soul and took divine wisdom as their guide. They knew the Holy Spirit to be a living force, an active presence, pouring out the waters of love and illumination onto humanity. For many centuries in a European culture deeply repressive of the soul and the feminine, alchemy and Kabbalah secretly carried the image of this disowned aspect of the Godhead. Alchemists who were Kabbalists knew her as the Shekinah. In one alchemical text, wisdom speaks these unforgettable words to the alchemists. Understand, ye sons of wisdom. Protect me, and I will protect you. Give me my due, that I may help you. One of the most powerful and profound statements of alchemy. This is a message for our own time, as the longing to protect nature and serve the life of the planet is rising in us. When the alchemists painted these extraordinary, beautiful images, they were working hand in hand with spirit to manifest spirit in this dimension of experience with their outstanding artistic skills. The very act of devotion to this work, communicating with the subtle field of the soul, developed their insight and their gifts. And this is how the white stone or rose and the lunar queen were constellated within them. Next, please. The end of the first phase and the formation of the white stone or rose is illustrated by this retort, holding the white lunar queen illumined by the sun. In this image, Mercury sits in a chariot drawn by two cocks up above, who herald the coming of the dawn. The matter that is being transmuted has now reached a stage of fixation in the alchemist that no fire of passion can destroy. And below there is a scene showing the flourishing of the arts and the sciences. So matter has been raised now through the stages of the Nigredo and the Albedo to a state where it can become the vehicle for the manifestation of spirit. Part of the work of the Albedo is to redeem the body, healing the split between mind and body, becoming aware of the atrocious suffering inflicted on the body throughout the solar era. The origin of negative projections onto the body is the belief that since the body has to die, it must be contaminated by sin and is therefore worthless and expendable. A colossal work of healing is asked for in order for the body and matter to be recognized as the living expression and vehicle of spirit. Too often today, in a secular culture that has no spiritual awareness, the body is viewed as a mechanism that can be made to conform to the will of the mind. One example of this is the attempt by the transgender community to encourage children to change their gender without any awareness that this is an assault on the sanctity of the body as well as the soul. Another is casual sexual encounters where there is neither love nor relationship. Reaching ever deeper into the heart of their psychic life that was reflected in the mirror of their retort, the alchemists began to see the unity of everything, how the ground of everything is spirit. They saw that matter was not dead or inert, and they felt the aliveness of matter, entered into dialogue with it, and wept with wonder and amazement at what was revealed to them. Next, please. So now we come to the greater work called the Rubedo, which is the final stage of the work. The Rubedo is about the creation of an immortal body of light, the integration of body, soul, and spirit, and the experience of union with the divine ground, the unus mundus. And its symbols are the red stone or rose, the divine elixir, the flower of immortality, the quintessential gold, and the phoenix. Next, please. This is an image of the young king, what's called the young king, who symbolizes the illumined consciousness, which is the red tincture, stone, or universal medicine that can heal all afflictions, which is what we are asking for in this course. The powers that can impede or destroy the work have been overcome. Here, Lunar, riding in a chariot above, has brought forth the fixed red tincture, the universal healing medicine, symbolized by the figure of the young king who stands on an inverted moon and is illumined by the golden rays of the sun. The white lunar soul is now tinctured with the gold of the rising sun. This final phase is about becoming aware of inhabiting an immortal body of light, the starry or celestial body that we will inhabit after our death. It dissolves the dualism that split nature from spirit and led to the perilous situation we are in now. It is about the union of body, soul, and spirit in the rising and full radiance of the sun as a symbol of the light and love of the divine ground. The Rubedo signifies the bursting open of the heart, the release of compassion as a fountain of light and love flowing out towards all life, towards the earth, towards each other. The longing to heal, to nurture, protect, and cherish is embodied in some kind of creative action, which will be different for each person. The alchemist likened the final stage of the Rubedo to the resurrection and to the reddening of the sky as the sun rises to the zenith, irradiating and warming the earth. Red gold is the color of the Rubedo, and the red rose and the red stone are symbols of the completion of the greater work. Next, please. In this beautiful image of the hermaphrodite, the soul of the alchemist has integrated the solar and lunar, conscious and unconscious aspects of his being, but also the invisible and visible dimensions of reality. He and she holds an egg that contains the colors of the phases of the process, the black of the Negredo, the white of the Albedo, and the red of the Rubedo. These are also reflected in the red and white wings and the black body. The man wears a solar halo and the woman a lunar one, and the mirror in the center reflects the surrounding landscape, which is also the inner landscape of the soul. The landscape within and without the mirror is tinctured with gold. I am reminded of the saying of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas, when you make the two one, and when you make the inner as the outer, and the outer as the inner, and the above as the below, and when you make the male and the female into a single one, so that the male will not be male and the female not be female, then you shall enter the kingdom. As they watch the matter of their psychic life transform in the mirror of their alchemical retorts, the alchemists experienced the immense mystery of what they were witnessing. They realized that they were assisting spirit in the evolutionary effort of bringing itself to consciousness over eons of earth time, leading its creation back to the source. They had revealed to them in a gradual process of illumination the innate divinity of nature and all life processes, They saw that one divine spirit was at work in all forms of life and in human consciousness as well. And they sought to bring to birth in themselves a hidden spirit that longed to be rescued from its buried state. In accomplishing this double act of redemption, they became the sons of divine wisdom, inheritors of the true philosophical gold, and they became the ministers, not the masters of the stone, their lives illumined and guided by the Holy Spirit, eternally pouring forth light and love from the divine ground. No one, they said, may accomplish this work except through humility and love. We cannot take a course in alchemy to become an alchemist. Alchemy is a shamanic experience that happens to us when we are ready to awaken. I would like to share with you, as an ending, a modern example of the experience of the Rubedo. It is taken from a recently published book called Silicon, written by an Italian physicist called Federico Fagin, an extraordinary, brilliant, and wonderful man who moved from Italy to America in his 20s, and working closely with matter, like an alchemist, invented the first microprocessor and went on to make other amazing electronic discoveries, such as the PC we all of us use now. And this is what he wrote in his book, in what he calls the third phase of his life. In December of 1990, while I was with my family at Lake Tahoe, I awoke around midnight to get a drink of water. I looked out over the lake while sipping the refreshing water. When I went back to bed again and tried to fall asleep, I felt a powerful rush of energy emerge from my chest like nothing I had ever felt before and could not even imagine possible. The feeling was love, but a love so intense and so incredibly fulfilling that it surpassed any other notions I had about love. Even more unbelievable was the fact that I knew I was the source of this love. I experienced it as a broad beam of shimmering white light, alive and beatific, gushing from my heart with incredible strength. Then suddenly that light exploded and it filled the room and expanded to embrace the entire universe with the same white brilliance. I knew then, without a shadow of a doubt, that this was the substance from which all that exists is made. This is what created the universe out of itself. Then, with immense surprise, I knew that I was that light. The entire experience lasted perhaps 1 minute, and it changed me forever. My relationship with the world had always been as a separate observer, perceiving the universe as outside myself and disconnected from me. What made this even more astonishing was its impossible perspective, because I was both the experiencer and the experience. I was simultaneously the observer of the world and the world. I was the world observing itself. I was concurrently knowing that the world is made of a substance that feels like love, and that I am that substance. This experience contained an unprecedented force of truth because it felt true at all levels of my being. At the physical level, my body was alive and vibrant, like I had never felt before. At the emotional level, I experienced myself as an impossibly powerful source of love. And at the mental level, I knew with certainty that all is made of love. I now see my identity as that unique point of view with which one, all that is, the totality of what exists, observes and knows itself. I am a point of view of one, a portion of one, indivisible from it. That vivid experience revealed a reality more real than the physical world I had previously thought was the only reality. My experience has maintained its original intensity and clarity over the years and has changed my life from the inside out. If we could take this revelation to our hearts, it could help us to heal all our relationships and transform our actions in the world. Because at the quantum level, we are all connected. When thousands of us, or even a few of us, begin to heal our hearts, millions are affected. I believe we can heal the terrible errors our beliefs have created. We can choose whether to continue in those beliefs or to live and act from a different relationship with life. As we do so, our minds would serve the deepest longing of our hearts and the deepest wisdom of our soul. And we would know with Giordano Bruno that a single force, love, links and gives life to infinite worlds. So now I will just give you a question to put to you for the breakout groups. While Ruth sings, can you reflect on this question? Where can you recognize the alchemical process in your own life? Where can you recognize the alchemical process in your own life?